It's been it's been such a pleasure to be a part of this group. And one of the things that is very beautiful about our interaction is how different we are, however, how beautifully we flow, especially because of the difference. And the fact that there is no pressure. So, this group, we always have this reminder, and Zeh is really good at reminding everyone about it. Let's be careful, see if we can handle that. Let's see if we can handle that much. And so, like, sometimes we get enthusiastic. Oh, we could create this and we could create that. And then, no, wait a minute. Let's see. Do we all have time for that? Is that going to be something that is feasible and comfortable for us to implement? And I'm starting with this because this is an important practice in everyone's daily life, which is every day I myself do this for myself. Is there too much on my plate today or not? How do I envision this flow of myself today? And I do that repeatedly throughout the day so that I can check whether I am going too fast, whether there is a space I need to take for myself in order to then continue feeling inspired and motivated, and of course inspiring. That's the name of my project, Inspiring Passion. And the passion here is not so much about the passing passions of this or that or the other, but more of the being aware of life itself flowing through us and having that passion to live, to be alive. And the breath is my main anchor, as Zé so well described and referred. And because simply it's the most prevalent thing we have in our lives. It accompanies us 24/7. And even when we have some sort of breathing impediment, whatever it is, the breath is essential. It is something that it needs to happen one way or another. So, coming into tune with the breath, and what I call that's why I call it conscious breath, is for me the simplest form of awareness there is. And so it's the only tool, if we could call it, that I use. I don't like to call it a tool because it's life itself flowing through our body, through our mind, through our life, bringing us the possibility of being aware 24/7. Of course, when we're sleeping, we're usually not going to be, oh, how am I breathing? So, yeah, but you know what I mean with the 24/7. Anyway, there are a few points I'd like to highlight here within this Mindful EFL special interest group. And one is that the title itself, Mindful, is very intentional because it is about us becoming mindful as people, mindful and aware of where we are at in our lives in each moment, how we are doing things, what we are doing, why we are doing them, and hopefully through being more mindful of our presence or not, of our behaviors, of our thoughts, we can then live a life that is more balanced, and then our presence within the sphere of others can also be much more productive, not only for ourselves, but for the people who interact with us on a daily basis. And in the case, teachers interact with quite a lot of people on a daily basis. So it is pretty relevant that each one of us, within the context of teaching, of being a teacher, can be aware that that self-compassion, that taking care of oneself, being mindful of oneself, is absolutely key. It's absolutely essential, and it is the first step to everything else. So someone was asking earlier on the chat whether the apps that Zé was sharing were teaching centered. No, they are not. And that's another thing which we have very present within this special interest group, which is that we don't intend to do only teaching centered things. So there will be teaching centered activities and so forth. But one of our main focuses is that us as people, in the first place, without the job title behind it, us as people can find a way of living more mindfully, whatever way it is. So we will share, each one of us, the areas of our expertise. Of course, there are many forms of being mindful. So in the case, if one regularly is mindful or practices any form of mindfulness, of so many things that Zé shared before, Professor José Pinto Gouveia, and what I'm going to share as well in this session, whatever. If we regularly implement that in our daily lives, then it will be easy as teachers to feel inspired and to have the creative possibility, the creative spark to go into the classroom and to actually implement a few things that came to you. So it's not so much about having to have a place where you can find all sorts of resources for the classroom that you can apply that are mindful or that are mindfulness geared. It's more about you becoming mindful and being within a mindfulness context for yourself that will then be what will infuse you on a daily basis. And therefore, because you are not 100 separate people, though sometimes if you're not aware, that can seem to be. So we many times tend to chop ourselves into pieces and be this and that and that and that. But the more mindful we become, the less separate we become, the less pieces, and the more one person. And that one person that you are will go into the classroom and be that one person that you cannot not be. Because the more mindful we become, the less we pretend, the more authentic we are capable of being, because with that self-compassion, we remove so many layers of self-criticism, judgment, self-sabotage, and so on. And that allows us to be in touch with ourselves and with our true nature, each one with their own gifts and skills. And so then when we go in the classroom, it will be hard to separate you, the self that is mindful, from you, the one that is the teacher. So don't fret too much about activities. And fortunately, Anna, who's coming next, has a lot of that for us still here today. But I'd like to just make the point that each one of you will for sure have so much insight and inspiration that's unique to you, because then the thing is, what works for you, what's coming from the way you perceive things, and that's what will be authentic then when you share it in the classroom. And now back to the breath. So The breath as an anchor is really, really simple to use because we breathe all the time. And how can we use the breath as an anchor to be mindful? Just becoming aware of it in the first place. So we tend to ventilate rather than breathe. What do I mean about that? So ventilating is just the act of having the breath do its thing without being aware of that thing that is happening. Being conscious of the breath is bringing our attention to the breath. So in that way, when we are aware of the fact that we are breathing, then the breath itself changes. It changes its cadence, its pace, and it changes also the whole incredible base of possibilities that it provides. So that's why it's so relevant that this is right here, the breath, and that we can use it. We can use it to help us on a daily basis to be more aware, more conscious. So, first thing, bringing our attention to the breath. So, is it shallow? Is it deep? Is it fast? Is it slow? What's going on with our breath? The first thing. And this can happen not only when you somehow sit or lie or stop to be aware of your breath, but it can happen anytime, no matter where you are, who you are with, and what you are doing. Simply become aware. I am breathing. And breathe from that awareness. Be in that awareness. Immediately, a load of things disappear. A load of other things where we were focusing our attention because, as Zé said, we're not multitaskers, though we tend to want to believe so. And so when you bring your focus into the breath, then a new awareness arises, and we are capable of becoming more focused on only that which is happening right now. And the breath is happening right now, one breath at a time. That's another important thing. So, first, bring the focus to the breath, and then be in that breath, the only breath that is happening right now. The next one will happen in its own time. No need to fret about it. So, being in the breath, one breath at a time. Another important thing about the breath is to allow it. So, just like I find maybe many teachers are at this point have been teaching for many years, and it can be really challenging to have lots of different kids in front of us every single day. And at some point it's like, oh my god, what can I do? And so there's this mindfulness thing, let's see if it works, but as a form of how can I control them, and switching off the need to control is a really important shift. And that happens also with the awareness on the breath. So here, when I say bring your attention to the breath, I don't mean control your breath. I mean be aware of it in the same way as has been shared about the thoughts. Exactly the same thing. So bring your awareness to the breath and allow it. And how do you do that? You just become available. It's that simple. Once you become available, the breath is allowed, and it will find a different rhythm, a rhythm eventually that opens up more the more you are available. So, one breath at a time being allowed, and that will be different. The way you feel in that moment will shift naturally, just because you are bringing your awareness to something different. And the other thing, before we actually experiment with this that I'm saying, um, it's two things I'm still going to say about it. It is a point of presence, right? Because you come into the awareness of the breath that is happening right now. And this brings you into being completely here, point of presence. And another important thing is that it can be your safe space. And what do I mean by that? So, as Professor José Pinto Gouveia shared, one of our basic mechanisms is that of finding safety. And therefore, there is the fear and all of the mechanisms that help us somehow protect our physical integrity, protect ourselves, our life, etc. Well, once we are capable of consciously starting to shift our awareness to the breath itself being allowed enters a different kind of pace, and a lot of the cortisol and all of the other stress creating hormones start naturally lowering, because we activate the sympathetic nervous system. And so what happens is that we naturally start feeling safer, just because we're not lost in the worrying thoughts, because now we're focused on the breath. That's the very simple thing. Now, do the thoughts then disappear just because we're focusing on the breath? No, of course they don't disappear. We're not trying to make them disappear. It's impossible to make them disappear. They will be less and less noisy the more one practices. And at some point, there will be silence as well, many times. But that is not something that is forced, that is made to happen. It just happens naturally. So once we are able to come into that breath in that moment, it becomes like a cocoon. It becomes like a comfortable, warming hug that you have in yourself, and it's happening 100% of the time. Now, imagine what it could be like if on a daily basis you just implemented this simple practice of bringing your awareness back to the breath constantly throughout the day. At some point you don't need to do that anymore, because that becomes a natural awareness. But imagine then walking in your daily life within that warm hug, within that comforting space within you. You start feeling different. You start feeling more alive. You start feeling more aware. And by feeling more aware, also clearer about the difference between the thoughts going through your mind and what you really feel like. The emotions eventually coming up and what you really are choosing in the moment, where you want to be at. Now, this is a theme that is actually can be a whole course with many hours. So I'm not going to go further into this. These were just the main basic things I wanted to share about the focus on the breath. So let's just, without even having to close our eyes in the first part, just sit here for a few seconds, bringing our awareness to the breath. Just that. Nothing in particular. Just see how it's happening, receiving the in-breath and naturally letting go of the out-breath. Just being aware of that flow, of the breath coming in, of what it feels like as it's coming into your body. Do you feel it spreading all over or not? There is no right thing in this moment. It's just being aware of the breath. And now, I don't know if you noticed, but I noticed or felt that immediately there is more silence. There is more quietness, more stillness. It is just something that happens naturally once we redirect our attention to something as sweet and soft as the breath. See, the breath itself, it has so many qualities. So once we just become available to feel it, those qualities become more evident, and then they become more available for us to implement on a daily basis. Now, second practice. So many people have trouble breathing, especially because of being very anxious or stressed out. And so one important thing with breathing is become aware whether it's happening only in the upper part of your body, whether it's happening, whether your shoulders are contracted, whether your neck is tense. And as you become aware of that, so you're not going to force it not to be like that. Once again, this is not a practice of controlling the breath. It's a practice of opening up to allow it. So what do you do? Okay, you notice it's tense and up here. You just relax a little bit more. You just, okay, let me ease my shoulders. Let me ease my neck a little bit. And the other thing you do is you ease your belly. So what you do, you stop holding your muscles tight. For whatever reason, we've learned that that's a really good thing to do. Probably aesthetics, I don't know. But and you also relax the diaphragm. The diaphragm is right here below the sternum. And how do you do that consciously? You just intentionally choose to relax it. So because it's not a muscle that you can move like your abdominals. You can't move. I mean, you can't move the diaphragm that easily if you aren't practiced in pranayama or whatever, or other breathing practices. So, but you don't need to. You don't need to. You just intentionally relax. Okay, relax the diaphragm. And now, intentionally be aware of how far your breath is going down. So, the belly breath, allowing your breath to go down into your belly, is a really wonderful way of getting away from the monkey mind. So the monkeys can keep on jumping around in their branches, and you come down into that sweet space in your belly where it is much quieter. So that's the second thing. We're just going to practice for a few seconds, but now I'm going to invite you to close your eyes. And an important thing, I'm going to invite you to please just breathe through your nose. So inhaling through the nose and exhaling through the nose, and allowing the breath to go as deep into your body as it can right now. You're not forcing it to go down into the belly. You're just allowing it, remember. Okay. I suppose you've taken a few breaths. And did you notice anything in particular? And one important thing, did you notice that no matter how many seconds we were breathing, that it seemed like that was the only thing that mattered in that moment? So, this is how the breath works to bring us into the point of presence. It's that simple. It can be just half a dozen breaths that are conscious and allowed. And there's only 3 minutes to the end of this session, so I'm not going to introduce any more practices, but if you would like to share anything, ask anything, I will leave these 3 minutes for that, and I will repeat the pacing I brought here. So it is awareness, bringing your awareness to the breath, becoming conscious of the breath, allowing it rather than trying to force it, and then becoming present only one breath at a time. And last but not least, feeling the safe space it creates and just allowing yourself to receive that safe space as you are coming into the breath. And then with time, allow the breath to come into your belly and to be there. Okay? That's it. That's simple. Thank you very much. Let me see.
Tânia, I've got a question here by our colleague, Sophia Nobre. She asks, is that safety directly related to confidence on what one's doing?
Well, yes, as a consequence, because once we remove our attention on everything else that is happening all over the place, and especially the thoughts, the worrying, kind of self-criticism that we implement very, very easily on a daily basis. So once we remove our attention from that, self-confidence grows. It's a natural thing, yeah. And so then you feel more confident the more you become aware of your breath, of everything that it brings to you. It brings to you, oh, I would go on for hours and hours just saying what the breath can bring to us in terms of its qualities, its transformational capacities, and it's here 100% of the time. Isn't that fantastic that we don't have to look for it, for this possibility anywhere else? It's right here. It's just using something that we have naturally to our benefit. That's it.
Okay. And I would add, and it's for free.
Yes, totally for free.
Okay.
Can I just add that Tânia will be sharing her some practices, guided practices on our YouTube channel, which once you're following our Facebook channel, you can have access to those practices.
Thank you very much, Anna. Someone was asking what the page was. The name of the page is Mindful EFL. So if you put that in the search engine on Facebook, you'll find it for sure. But the link is on our newsletter, which you will be receiving this week.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
It's been
Thank
a
you,
pleasure.
Tânia. Wonderful, wonderful session. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, back to Sonia.
Okay, Zé. Thank you so much, Tânia. It was wonderful. I feel really relaxed. I was already relaxed in the morning, but now I'm, I think, in a Zen, I don't know, feeling really great.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much, Sonia.
So we're going to our last session in few minutes with Anna Pires. So we'll have a time for coffee, cup of tea, to stand up again, to stretch our arms, to breathe in, breathe out, take 1 minute, and we'll come back for the last one. Thank you so much, Tânia. See you in some minutes.
Okay, so my tip, just breathe.
Yes, I have a
See you in a minute.
series. I have a series called Just Breathe, and it's
Okay.
full of tips there.
Right, okay.
Thank
See you in a
you.
minute.